Good morning, everyone. I propose to start in a minute. Mr. Christa, as a rapporteur, you can also sit in the front on the place 014. So good morning, everyone. You're on the last day of this week, Friday. The sitting is open, and I'd like to remind members that they should, of course, insert their badge before you can take the floor. And as you begin your speech, please then press the microphone button once only. The first item of business this morning is a debate on the report titled Risks and Opportunities of the Metaverse, which is document 16,031. And this will be presented by Mr. Andrea Lucian Cristea on behalf of the Committee on Culture, Science, Education and Media. We will finish the speakers list, replies, and the vote by around 11. And I call now Mr. Cristea as a rapporteur. You have 7 minutes now, and then later on 3 minutes at the end to reply to debate. Mr. Cristea, you have the floor. Did you insert your badge?
Chair, thank you so much for this. Good morning, dear colleagues. May I start with a word of praise for my distinguished colleagues and from the staff from our committee, because this is the result of a work which happened in the last 2 years. We had 7 rounds of consultations with the tech companies, with all the stakeholders, with NGOs, with academia, and this is the final result. Dear colleagues, indeed, Marshall McLuhan was right. The medium is the message. While the internet is a medium for interaction where people engage with content and processes, the metaverse is an enhanced and upgraded medium where immersive technologies play a central role. The metaverse, along with virtual and augmented reality, is more than just a technological advancement. It represents a profound shift in how we live, interact, and experience reality. But what are the deeper societal and personal consequences of this transformation? How do we ensure it aligns with democratic values, human rights, and social stability in an era of unprecedented technological changes? Dear colleagues, there is a physical reality and a social one constructed by the human species. This constructed reality doesn't need to be accurate, doesn't need to be correct, or even real to create real consequences for real people in the real world. Historically, the power to shape social realities belonged to religious institutions and later to states. Now, tech companies are creating the infrastructure for others to play that role. What does this mean for our societies? In the past, states controlled physical spaces. In the metaverse, control shifts to the virtual realm. You no longer need to physically move to explore the world or engage with others. But as our interactions are increasingly mediated by technology, let me ask you, are they still authentic? What defines a real experience when so much of it occurs digitally? The metaverse offers immersive experiences that blur the lines between the real and the virtual. For instance, visiting a museum from your living room might feel real, but you aren't physically there. The technology of tomorrow can make it possible to drive your real car on the streets from your living room. What about the regulations, the norms, and the consequences? Human social interaction is deeply rooted in our nature. Virtual experiences may efficiently satisfy this need, but will they eventually replace slower, more meaningful face-to-face interactions? As virtual interactions become more intense, they may overshadow less stimulating but potentially richer real-world experiences, particularly for developing young minds. At its core, the metaverse allows for the separation of cognitive presence from physical presence. You can travel the world, manipulate objects, and participate, all without physical effort. It offers the most intense subjective experiences at the lowest metabolic cost. But when technology makes everything easy, do we risk losing touch with the effort and authenticity that define human experience? Beyond the individual, we must consider what kind of society we are building with this technology. If the internet democratized information, the metaverse democratizes experiences. While this opens up incredible possibilities, it also shifts power away from traditional institutions and toward tech companies. What happens when reality becomes subjective, shaped by the stories and experiences the metaverse delivers? In the metaverse, dear colleagues, reality is being experienced through a technological filter, which changes everything. How we perceive the world affects how we act. If the metaverse becomes the dominant way we experience life, what does this mean for our behaviors, politics, and social structures? Will it empower individuals or deepen inequalities? Will it promote peace and respect or fuel abuse, hatred, and polarization? As we step into this new frontier, we need to think carefully about the kind of world we want to build for future generations. Technology is a tool, an interface between our biology and the world, but it is also becoming the medium in which we live. We are used to navigating interactions in the physical realm, but are we prepared for the interactions that will dominate in the metaverse? In a world where consensus is shaped by algorithms, by blockchain technology, distributed ledger systems, and the interaction happens without physical presence, how do we ensure that we don't lose sight of the human elements that hold society together? How do we ensure that the metaverse serves the collective good and upholds our social and democratic values? The resolution we examine today offers concrete recommendations to ensure that legislative frameworks for the metaverse uphold democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. It calls for enhanced international cooperation and collaboration with the private sector to address the complexities of this technology, promote fair competition, and develop ethical standards for a safe and creative metaverse. While the future is uncertain, one thing is clear. The decision we make now will shape the world we live in tomorrow. And dear colleagues, in the end, I would like to ask you, in 60 years from now, what is our goal? I mean, do we want to be the richest men and women from the cemeteries, or we really care about what kind of society we leave behind?
Thank you, Mr. Christian, for this report and being in the time. So now I start with the debate, and we'll start first with the speakers on behalf of the political groups, and then afterwards the normal speakers list. So the first is Mr. Koncharenko from the political group EC. You have the floor, 3 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Merci pour le rapporteur.
Thank you very much, dear President. Thank you to the Rapporteur. I'd like, first of all, to thank the Rapporteur and the Secretariat of the committee for the outstanding work carried out. One thing is ever so important. We're talking about new technologies, and there are so many different possibilities that they throw up, but there are threats as well. What I want to say with regard to the war that's going on in Ukraine, what conclusions can we draw from this? Well, we need to realize that the war has changed. Now, in Ukraine, it's not a war as the First World War, the Second World War. It's a completely different type of war. It's a war of drones. It's a hybrid warfare. It's information warfare as well. And we need to be prepared for this. When the Ukrainian drone, which costs 100,000 euros, destroys a Russian warship, which costs 50 million euros, when the Ukrainian drone Ariane, which costs 400 euros, destroys a tank, which costs 1 million euros. This is something that's completely different. Today, a drone operator is far more important than someone on the battlefield, or there's someone with boots on the ground as such. And this is all about our educational system. We need to prepare people and our students at schools to pilot drones and to work in a 3D environment as well. It's all about war, really. If you're trying to prepare for a war, this is a question that our children have to prepare themselves for and get used to. And I want to say something to you, to our colleagues. We need to change our education systems. It's all about being able to pilot drones. It's about dealing with artificial intelligence and other such tools. Either we prepare our future generations to be able to defend our civilization, and this needs to be done within our schools, or our enemies will come and destroy our schools and our civilizations. That's how things are. Thank you very much indeed.
Merci, Monsieur Bonchagarenko. And I have the floor for 3 minutes to Mr. Akalin from the ALDE Group.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank the rapporteur for this intensive report. The Metaverse is a symbol of the emerging digital age, represents an extraordinary digital innovation with the potential to contribute up to 5 trillion to the global economy by 2030. It promises to revolutionize and provide opportunities for a whole range of sectors. However, opportunities come with implications and significant risks. While this digital world is assumed to contribute to many aspects of our lives, it can harm human rights, individuals' freedoms, and social equality if not properly guided. This resolution aims to address the issue and refers for measures to prevent monopolization by the handful of corporations, which could exacerbate socioeconomic inequalities and limit cultural diversity, draws attention to need for privacy and data protection. Discrimination, harassment, and online abuse, especially towards children and vulnerable members of society, could carry over. Human rights and effective age-appropriate protections has to be developed and implemented within the Metaverse. This means strict content moderation, parental controls, and educational programs to help young users navigate these new spaces safely. Many traditional jobs may disappear entirely with the Metaverse, giving rise to new professions. The challenge for policymakers will be to prepare the workforce for these shifts to remain competitive in the global economy. We need smart, forward-looking regulations that protect users' rights without stifling innovation. A framework that encourages competition, transparency, and security in the Metaverse, ensuring that it remains an open, fair space that respects freedom of expression and encourages diversity of thought for all. A clear mechanism should be established for investigating and penalizing these crimes committed in the Metaverse. Companies processing the technology must be aware of their responsibilities and develop technical measures to prevent such incidents. Metaverse is a socio-economic revolution in the making. Europe has a unique opportunity to shape its future, ensuring that it aligns with our shared values of fairness, equality, human rights, and sustainability. We must act collaboratively to harness its potential while mitigating its risks and effectively addressing the emerging dangers, and work together to ensure that it is a future that benefits all, one that fosters innovation, safeguards rights, and promotes a more inclusive digital world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Acquelin. Et maintenant, je donne la parole à
And now I give the floor to Ms. Jean-Baptiste Renard from the United European Left Group. Thank you very much indeed, President. Thank you very much indeed to the Rapporteur for this very balanced presentation, which acknowledges the opportunities offered by the Metaverse, such as democratic participation and learning, but also flags up the risks of virtual connected technology at world level. The extended reality immersive technologies do indeed present huge risks for compliance with human rights, such as spreading misinformation, increased surveillance of the population by states, and a problematic concentration of power and checks in the hands of technology giants, which are far too powerful. Virtual reality helmets and augmented reality, if they're associated with other technologies, can pursue an objective of more and more invasive data collection. This is something that's pursued by companies which wish to protect citizens, but are in fact including invasive technologies in our day-to-day lives. And data that's collected can, of course, give rise to biometric psychology and profiling. And this can, of course, be used for targeted advertising and mass surveillance. This equipment collect huge amount of information on our private areas and houses, and can be used by companies to legitimately access our private lives. Tuesday, in our chamber, Julian Assange mentioned the way in which governments, in the context of a war, misuse mass surveillance data to organize targeted assassination by using artificial intelligence as well. And we can see what the dreadful reality of this is in Ukraine, in Gaza, and in the Lebanon. We urge, therefore, this Assembly to defend the rule of law, international law, and human rights, and in particular in the Metaverse. The resolution should underline that the virtual space should never be a space without the rule of law. Human rights should be placed in the center of extended virtual reality, with appropriate applications developed. In view of the inhibition on the freedom of expression throughout the world, we need all to sign up to proportionate measures which are in compliance with the Santa Clara principles. And we, as legislators, should ensure that the larger technology companies should not develop or should not prevent their competitors from developing alternative systems which more respect human rights. They need to respect human rights as set out in the United Nations Guiding Principles on Businesses and Human Rights. The last point, let's continue to check what's happening in the Metaverse and associated technologies which cause the mass production of electronic waste and the excessive use of energy and the increased use of resources and minerals and metals. To conclude, let's remind you that augmented reality can, of course, offer open access to what's happening in governments. And in the spirit of WikiLeaks, the resolution should encourage the emancipation role that it can play for informed citizenship and connected citizenship. Thank you very much indeed.
Merci, Madame Stambach. And then I give the floor now to Mrs. Kluit from the Socialist Group.
Yes? No? Yes. Okay. Well, without a doubt, we today have access to a diverse information thanks to the Metaverse. It has an endless opportunity for humankind. But we also have to recognize that the things that happen in the meta-universe also happen in the real world. We all could read about the influence of Andrew Tate on young boys, and young boys translating that to female unfriendly responses in Australia, so women are leaving now the educational sector. And that is, of course, not the way we want to go. So it is an opportunity and a risk in itself. It has, on the upside, it is a great pluralism of ideas. We have lots of educational opportunities. It helps us in our daily life with applications that make lives simpler. And it also has a great opportunity for access to societies. I mean, where you had to go to a library, you can just Google it, or you can ChatGPT it, and you get so much information. But it's not always reliable. So you need to learn how to work with the metaverse, and people cannot do that by themselves. They need help, they need to be educated, and we need to take, as societies, a responsibility to have them do so. And we have to also educate people about the democratic and limitations of the meta-universe. We have seen over and over and over again how online information, online disinformation, and online aggressive campaigns against democracy can undermine our systems where we fight so hard for in this chamber. So the freedom of expression must be compatible with ethical and responsible use of the metaverse, and there it's sometimes lacking. We have to find regulation that will protect our human rights and our democracy, because we are otherwise misinformed, manipulated, we get rare radical ideologies entering our debate, and that is really, really dangerous. And for example, editorial responsibilities are a big issue here. I mean, why are we regulating our newspapers with 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 readers, and we're not regulating people who have like millions, tens of millions followers and influencing the public debate? That is a big issue we need to address. So this is what precisely what governments need to work on. In Spain, there's done some lovely work. My colleague will hopefully tell a bit more about that later on, where they try to get more grip, and the European Union is also working on it, but we should also pay attention. Because I sincerely believe we do have to set limits on the metaverse if we want to uphold our humanitarian law and our democratic values. So it's about finding a balance. It's an important report, but it will not be the last one, I hope. I hope we will keep working on it because we need to establish international agreements, and we need to do it fast. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mrs. Klets. Then I give the floor to Mr. Carvalho from the EPP.
Thank you, Mr. President, dear colleagues. Immersive technologies are changing the world and are changing democracy. We cannot ignore that emerging technologies, including metaverse, are being used to great positive effect in multiple sectors of society, including education, healthcare, culture, sports, and many others so important as media and communication, and increasing in participatory democracy. It's a new world. It's not more person to person. Everything in different dimensions can be remote and virtual, and of course, with benefits for those who are specially isolated by their location or lack of mobility, health, or financial capacity. Although we believe in self-regulation, we also know that might not be enough, and that's why we support the need to involve private companies and commitment to the need of an approach that can guarantee the reporting of criminal behavior. In EPP, we encourage member states to ensure a legislative and regulatory framework adapted to metaverse environments that uphold democracy, human rights, the rule of law, responding to law infringements with adequate measures concerning policing, jurisdiction, evidence gathering, and directing sanctions on counteract harassment, violence, abuse, and manipulative, exploitative conducts, as well as safeguarding freedom of expression and dealing with the new forms of social and political manipulation. We cannot also forget the foreign interference and the fake news that are one of the biggest threats to democracies, and that this Assembly has put in different reports for several times. That's the reason why we are facing new challenges, and we cannot ignore that we need to deal with them. Regarding metaverse, we cannot ignore that we face, like in the real world, criminal behaviors like harassment, violence, abuse, fraud, and theft, and many other human rights violations, not forgetting that in metaverse environments we can also potentiate the manipulation of public opinion. That's why in EPP we believe that decision makers must be aware of the threats to democracy, human rights and the rule of law, despite all the opportunities and advantages of Metaverse. In EPP we defend more international cooperation among the governments, collaboration between governments and private sector, researchers, so we can all together address the challenge of Metaverse technology, incentivizing a safe, creative, immersive ecosystem, ethical standards. We congratulate the Rapporteur and we support the draft resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carvalho. So we end now with these speakers on behalf of the political groups, and we go to the other speakers lists. I give first the floor to Lord Griffiths from the Socialist Group. You have the floor for 3 minutes, please.
Is it working? Yes, good. Thank you, President and colleagues. I would like to thank the Rapporteur and his committee for a splendid piece of work, and perhaps add to that for his introduction to the debate today, which has laid the issues before us in a very clear way. Members may wonder what an old man like me can contribute to a subject where emerging technology is very much in our focus. It's a fair question, since I started my intellectual life before the internet was invented. It went on to social media. We've been discussing artificial intelligence, and now we're in the metaverse. And I have seen so much happen. And I've just stepped down from 3 years on a select committee in the House of Lords in the British Parliament on communications and digital, where we're looking at large language models and artificial intelligence from that angle. We were urged in our committee, which was from all parties, we were urged to concentrate on the positive. And it's clear that there were people there, politicians, who saw the metaverse and the technology as aiding our commercial advantages in the world, helping us, as was said by the previous speaker, with various aspects of our daily living. But not to concentrate on the negative. That's why I like this report. It was very clear about the balance of interests. But I have noticed the angle of approach in a body like ours in London, which wants to maximize the use of modern technology for political and social advantage, sometimes at the expense of a proper consideration of the negative aspects. And I dissented from that pressure and made it clear that I was going to add a view of the negative things we were discussing as we interviewed people from the top jobs in all the platforms and laboratories and research centers that you can imagine. And it is really a worry, because from a human rights point of view, which is what we are here for, a different atmosphere altogether, we've got to approach it from the way that the technology can help to create societies that really could do without it. It's just interesting to me that, that this is a worldwide phenomenon. Therefore, any regulatory body we set up, any code of conduct, will only be as strong as its weakest link, because we may urge the governments for all we're worth to do this, that, and the other to improve and to make things safe. But at the end of the day, somewhere in the world, there'll be a way of contravening, undermining, and breaking those codes to the disadvantage of all of us. So I would just urge us to bear that in mind and to acknowledge that making laws and codes to govern practice in this area takes so much time that by the time they're enacted, the game is somewhere else. This is a phenomenally difficult subject, and we should give it our cleverest attention and maximize everything that's in section 5 of this wonderful report.
Thank you, Lord Griffiths. And the next speaker is Mr. Kamelchuk, but I don't think he's in the room. No, then I go to Mrs. Grippo Valentina. No. Then I go to Mr. Laszlo Turaskai. No. Then I'm going to Mr. Corbyn. You have the floor for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this is a very valuable and very timely debate, even if not particularly well attended this morning. But I suppose that's the price of Friday morning. And I think we should thank the authors of this report. It's far-reaching, and it makes the point in the discussion that this is far more than just a technological advancement. Because like Lord Griffiths, I've grown up from a pre-internet age to now incredibly sophisticated technology. I am not against technology in any way. I think it massively advances human understanding, massively advances opportunities and social inclusion at its best. But nevertheless, it does have to be monitored, it does have to be regulated, and does have to be controlled in some way. At its worst, the technology offered by the Metaverse allows horrible attitudes to be promoted, isolated people to be exploited, racist and homophobic attitudes to be promoted, and it can be incredibly dangerous. But at its best, of course, it does provide the opportunities for massive access to information and experiences which would otherwise be denied. And so we have to make the balance that goes with it. When Mr. Goronchenko spoke earlier, he talked about the uses of high technology in war, which are killing an awful lot of people in both Russia and Ukraine at the present time, and being used to kill an awful lot of people in Gaza and in Lebanon. High technology can be used for the most brutal consequences and the most brutal effects. But it can also be used to promote understanding. It can also be used to promote peace. It can also be used to promote a cultural solidarity, which is so often lacking in so much that we do in this world. Julian Assange, who spoke here earlier this week, and personally I think has made a massive contribution to understanding of the dangers of untrammeled power in this world, has exposed an awful lot of the way technology has been used. What I would like to just draw attention to is 3 of the recommendations at the back. 11.5, which is concerning the promotion of ecological standards and sustainability, I think is very important. 11.7 on cultural alternatives and cultural understanding is, I think, extremely important as well. And 11.8, which is about promotion of human rights. Now, in the Council of Europe, we discuss many things, and we have many very valuable reports. My concern is that quite often that is often as far as they get. Governments, we're often unclear what they actually do with these reports and how much they bring them back. So I hope when the rapporteur responds, he'll be able to assure us that there will be some method of monitoring and following up on this to see what response is achieved from all our member state governments so that we can look forward to something more appropriate in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Corbyn. Then I go to Mrs. Biluzir.
Monsieur le Président.
President, colleagues, I should like to thank the rapporteur, Mr. Cristea, for this important report that I fully support. Legal frameworks concerning the metaverse must respect democracy, human rights and the rule of law, because the metaverse is developing rapidly in many countries, including my own. Ukraine today is very much a digital country. For example, we have an application called DIA, which offers a wide range of online government services, and thanks to DIA, Ukrainians can register companies and even get married. Indeed, Ukraine is the first country anywhere in the world to organize online marriages via DIA. The marriage process is digital, and couples who are in the military or long-distance couples can get married online. This is very important, particularly in bridging divides and distances in a time of war. In Ukraine, We also encourage the metaverse in education, making it possible for pupils to be taught by distance learning. But there's a big problem. We have constant cyber attacks from Russia, particularly on government sites. And this digital war is just as awful as the physical attacks. And that is why we need decisive measures to combat such attacks. And we also have to combat illegal content. And I would like to thank France for its response to the problem when illegal content is disseminated via Telegram. We have to clamp down on cyber intimidation, drugs trafficking, as well as other dangers in the metaverse in which people, women and children, are rendered vulnerable. And that is why I fully support this resolution. We have to see to it that the virtual world safeguards our human rights. We have to take steps to make sure that people have access to digital technologies. At the same time, they have to be safe in our unique world. Thank you.
Merci, Madame Bilozir. Now I give the floor to Mr. Schleicher.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, first I want to thank the Rapporteur for his valuable contribution to the Metaverse topic and all those involved in making this report possible. As the Metaverse takes shape, it's clear it will fundamentally impact how we interact with information, media, and each other. This is not just a passing trend, but a transformative shift, and we must address both its opportunities and risks. The progression of virtual reality technology has been remarkable. In the 1980s, early VR systems allowed interaction with virtual worlds, but they were limited by the technology of the time. The concept of virtual reality had to remain dormant for decades, waiting for technological advancements to overcome the hardware limitations of the past. But in 2016, the release of the Oculus Rift marked a turning point. It offered room-scale VR, but it required base stations like you see over here, and a powerful PC to run this. This sparked a new VR boom, propelling major tech companies to enter the market and position themselves as key players in this emerging space, recognizing the immense potential of immersive technologies. Shortly after, in 2019, Oculus launched the Quest, an untethered standalone headset that made VR more accessible and user-friendly, taking the technology further. Meta has recently announced Meta Orion, a prototype AR glasses offering a glimpse into the future, where digital and the physical worlds merge seamlessly. With Meta's bold goal of reaching 1 billion VR users, it highlights the vast potential of this technology. However, as the VR Bible is still being written, we must guide its development to align with societal needs and values. The metaverse offers great opportunities, but also raises privacy concerns, especially around biometric data and the risks to democracy and human rights through manipulation and exploitation. Reports of abuse highlight the need for clear regulation and accountability, but it also has the potential to transform education and culture. But ethical standards are essential to ensure these advancements are safe and beneficial to society. Dear colleagues, as members of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, we have a responsibility to guide the evolution of the metaverse. We must act now, creating regulatory frameworks that promote safety, transparency, and accountability. This will ensure that the metaverse develops as a force for good, balancing innovation and protection. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Then I go to Mrs. Moschenetz.
We are grateful for a comprehensive overview of the topic, the relevance of which is constantly growing in a world where the internet and digital technologies are transforming reality daily, opening new opportunities for humanity. The full-scale invasion by Russia demonstrates the potential of technologies to be a powerful tool. In the context of the occupation is about 26% of Ukraine, expanding the operation capacity and increasing the accessibility of Metaverse give us a chance to recreate cities that have been destroyed and use such virtual copies for future reconstruction. The evolution of digital tools is the key to recovering what modern humanity has lost or forgotten, what is hidden in our history. The aggressor country has stolen more than 400,000 artworks from Ukraine, and at least 38 museums have been damaged or destroyed. Thanks to the possibilities of Metaverse, the Ukrainian agency has created a virtual archive of memory with the lost exhibits of Kyunji Art Museum in Mariupol, which resist attempts to erase our national identity. The Metaverse, in cooperation with artificial intelligence, can offer innovative approaches to training military troops, providing a flexible and adaptive method, safe conditions, and minimizing the injuries during training. Metaverse is a way of modernization, a method of strengthening the stability of the state and new dimension of interaction between people, information, and technology. It is our duty to review, adapt, and develop new standards of human rights protection to the realities of the modern information society, ensuring a balance between freedom of speech and security. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Because some time is left, just ask to the audience if there is anyone else who want to contribute to the debate. No? Then I call Mr. Cristea as a rapporteur to reply. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. So indeed, Mr. Goncharenko and Madam Moshnets, indeed, tech changes everything. Tech accelerates almost to the point of derailment all the social, economical, political processes. Even the war is being changed. The warfare is being changed because of the technologies. Indeed, we need to have digital tech and media literacy for ourselves as lawmakers, as decision makers, but also for our people, for the young generation, for the old generation, because this is the future. Mr. Akalin, you are perfectly right. It's the usage, it's how we use the technology. The technology per se is not good, it's not bad, it's not even neutral, but how we use it, this is key. And indeed, AI puts pressure on the job market we know today, and I agree with your remarks. Madam Stambach, indeed, there are problems when it comes to energy needs, to electricity needs, to power these new technologies, and I agree with your point of view. Madam Kluit, indeed, how to work with the metaverse is key. Education is of paramount importance, and the responsible use of technology is something we should keep in mind. Mr. Carvalho, Lord Griffiths, yes, I believe that indeed there is this structural asymmetry between the human capacity to adapt to change, the biological capacity of the brain, and the pace, the speed, and the magnitude of the change brought by new emergent technologies. I took note of all the comments. I would like to say a big thank you to Richard Schlesers for showcasing us the technology, the history of the headsets, and thank you for assisting me during our work in our committee. Mr. Robert Fassino is here today. He is a senior civil servant in the Committee for Science, and his help was much appreciated. Together with Silvia Arzili and other colleagues, I should mention Rodica and Patrick Penix. Thank you for assisting me, and because this is my last day here in the Council of Europe, since I will take over a position in the European Parliament, I would like to thank you all for being good colleagues and having a very fruitful and constructive time in this House. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cristea. Does the chairperson of the committee wish to speak? You have the floor.
Gracias, presidente. Estimados colegas, es la primera vez que...
Thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, this is the first time that I have represented the committee in plenary on a very innovative report that our colleague has prepared with great clarity and moderation. First of all, this report and the accompanying draft resolution show that we parliamentarians need to be much more visionary, prudent, as well as far-sighted in our role as legislators. Because although this might appear to belong to the realm of science fiction, this is very much now a part of our reality. And things are hurtling forward at a vertiginous pace, and technological advances move in leaps and bounds. And the metaverse is already omnipresent in the daily lives of many of our fellow citizens, and we have to be prepared. The moment is now. Of course, there are opportunities that we may squander if we simply remain on the sidelines at the genesis of the metaverse, or if we confine ourselves to being the passive users of the advances of others. And of course, there are risks that may be lethal to our democratic systems, our societies, as well as our sovereignty, if we don't put in place the means of avoiding such risks. These risks particularly relate to vulnerable people who, in all likelihood, will not be able to access the metaverse, or indeed older people who don't have the digital know-how of young people. And the Culture Committee has identified some of the opportunities and the risks, the most obvious ones, and the draft resolution offers a number of specific proposals, and I'm confident you'll be able to support them. Secondly, I want to stress that this excellent job of work does not give us definitive solutions. Rather, it paves the way for further reflection, at the same time indicating the various avenues that our committee, along with others, could explore, delving deeper into the analysis of the fundamental problems and trying to fill out and flesh out the framework of our report. It's not a job simply for our assembly, but also for each and every one of us in our national parliaments. And that is why I very much hope that the report that we're poised to adopt will be circulated and used. And that way, I think, I can close by wishing all the very best to our colleague in his future endeavours in the European Parliament, and I very much hope that he will keep up all the good work he has done here in defending human rights. So I wish you every success in the European Parliament. Good luck, Andrew.
Thank you, Mrs. Martinez-Sejo, for the nice words. So the debate is closed now. The Committee on Culture, Science, Education and Media has presented the draft resolution with a number of 16,031, to which one amendment has been tabled. And I remind you that speech on amendments are limited to 30 seconds. Any amendment which has been unanimously approved by the committee sized for report shall not be put to the vote in the plenary and shall be declared as definitely approved unless 10 or more members of the Assembly object. But I understood that the chairperson of the committee wished to propose to the Assembly that Amendment 1 to the draft resolution, which has unanimously approved. So, is that so?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it has been approved, yes.
Okay. unanimously? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Martinez-Rigaud. If no one objects, I will consider the amendment to be approved. There's no objection from the room? No? So the amendment 1 to the draft resolution is therefore approved and will not be called. So we will now proceed to vote on the draft resolution contained in document 16,031. A simple majority is required. The vote is open. Okay, the vote is closed. Congratulations, this is unanimously. The draft resolution in document 6031 is adopted unanimously. And I also like in my name to wish you a very good luck in the European Parliament, which is stated also for 1 week here in Strasbourg, but for 3 weeks in Brussels. So welcome to my country. Thank you, Mr. Christin, and see you maybe in Brussels. Thank you. So we now come to the free debate. I would only like to remind the members that this debate is for topics not, I repeat, not already on the agenda agreed on Monday morning. Speech must always comply with the principles set out in Rule 22.6 on acceptable words. And the speaking time will be limited to 3 minutes. I first call Mr. Randolph de Battista. You have 3 minutes, and please start by identifying the topic you wish to raise. You have the floor.
Thank you, dear Chair. My topic is human rights. Given that this will be my last speech in this plenary, as I move to a new role in Geneva in the coming months, I wanted to take this opportunity to reflect on the short but meaningful experience I had these months in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. And as I look back, I am proud of the work that has been done by the group that I proudly form part of, the committee, particularly on equality, and some of the resolutions and reports that we have passed together in this chamber, amongst others, the right to a healthy environment, the protection of women human rights defenders, the rights of LGBTIQ persons, and the protection of journalists, including, obviously, Julian Assange. And in the pipeline, a number of reports that will also be debated, like the ban on conversion practices, the rapporteur, our very own friend, Kate Osborne, and also overcoming age-based discrimination against older persons. As we navigate an increasingly complex world, our commitment to defending human rights must remain unwavering. In the face of modern threats, including the attack on multilateralism, misinformation, disinformation, the anti-gender movement, the far right, human dignity must never be compromised. The future of human rights depends on our collective will to adapt and address emerging challenges. We must not fall for the trap of easy answers. And as the new Prime Minister of the UK said recently, you can call it populism, many people do, but I call it the politics of easy answers. And we should not fall for the trap of easy answers. Allow me to refer to some of the comments I heard during a number of these debates, especially from the opposite side. When, for example, they refer to gender ideology, when they refer to so-called hate speech. Well, you know what? a number of people died, so many people died because of this hate speech. And some of the colleagues referred to also the exhibition that we have. Well, I received an email to protest against this exhibition, but my reply was, thank you for the promotion. It's such a wonderful expression of art. I conclude by thanking everyone, all my colleagues, and say that we must continue to innovate our approach to ensure that human rights is not just an old, boring relic, but remains a living thing that we should always protect. As I leave this assembly, I trust that the pursuit of human rights will remain at the heart of this assembly, and even as the landscape changes, we should always keep in mind Mother Teresa's words that human rights are not something that the government gives to people, it's every human being's reflection of their dignity. Thank you very much for all the work you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Battista. Then I go to Mr. Vlasenko. Okay, he's not in the room. Thank you. Then we go to Mr. Goncharenko.
Dear colleagues, dear chairman, it's very good that we took back the free debate because this is an important debate, because here we can speak about something which is maybe not in the agenda of our meetings, but which is so important. And I want to speak now with you about security situation in the world and what's going on. And the situation is very bad. And I'm not just saying it, I will now prove it to you. Because when you leave, you may think, oh, it's more or less the same how it was yesterday. I just want to remind you. So, here we have October 4, 2024. 3 years ago, October 4, 2021. No big war in Ukraine. Yes, there was already Russian aggression, but not a full-scale invasion. No big war in Middle East. Red Sea is free for passage of the ships and so on. It's just 3 years ago. Let's take another October 4, 2022. Full-scale invasion of Russia in Ukraine. The new Guerre mondiale, a new world war, because like tanks, missiles attacking European cities. But still, Middle East, it was said, it's so calm, like not in the years, Red Sea is calm. Then you remember, October 7, attack of Hamas on Israel, and the war in Middle East began. So, year ago, again, October 4, 2023. Now we have full-scale invasion in Ukraine, big war in Middle East already, and so on and so on. So every year, situation is deteriorating. Why? Because one more, I didn't mention to you, event. It's what Houthis, so-called, are doing in the Red Sea. They're destroying ships, like just days ago, they destroyed British ship again, and we all pay price for this, all of us, because it influences the world prices, because commercial navigation is so important. And what is doing the world to stop these pitiful Houthis? No, the whole world can't stop pitiful Houthis. I'm opening Wikipedia. You can just open and watch yourself. Operation of started October 19 last year. United States, United Kingdom, Bahrain, Canada, Denmark, Finland, Greece, Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway. All of them can't finish these Houthis. All these countries can't finish them. I mean, it's a shame. And that's why they think that they can do whatever they want with us. Why? Because when Russia sees, like yesterday was said in Washington, they said, Pentagon representative, we can't intercept Russian missiles and drones in Ukrainian skies. Why? Because this will be escalation, they said. So it's crazy. Russian missiles are falling on Polish territory. Russian drones are falling on Romanian territory. But Poland, Romania, and other NATO members are afraid to protect their territory. It's crazy. And we need to make decisions and make lessons finally from this. If we will not stop them, they will stop us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Koncharenko. Then I go to Mr. Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I too want to talk about the situation of security within the world. At the moment, there are serious wars going on in Ukraine, where Russia wrongly invaded Ukraine, and the terrible war is going on, and thousands of people are dying both in Ukraine and in Russia. There is the conflict going on of the continued bombardment of Gaza, now the invasion of Lebanon, and the dangers of a war with Iran. There is a massive war going on in Sudan, fueled by the arms trade and by internal conflict within Sudan. There is a massive loss of life going on in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where people are being killed because of the greed of mining companies wanting to get coltan to produce mobile phones. The issues around the world are often complicated, but what seems to me to be so badly lacking from both the media reporting and our debates here, and often the debates at the United Nations as well, is the language of peace, the language of diplomacy, the language of diplomatic intervention to try to bring about a peace process of some sort. All wars have to end with diplomacy. All wars have to end with some kind of agreement and some kind of conference. And it's to the credit of the General Secretary of the United Nations that he's tried to do that. It is the shame of Israel. They've now banned him from even visiting the country. And it is to the credit of Latin American presidents and the African Union that they have too tried to bring about some kind of diplomatic rapprochement. But I want to also just say this about what's happening in Gaza and in the Lebanon at the present time. What happened in October last year was not the start of the process. The start of the process was the occupation of the West Bank, is the invasion of Gaza by Israel since then, is the continued settlement policy on the West Bank. And so far, in Gaza alone, 45,000 people have been killed by Israeli bombardment. The infrastructure has been destroyed, homes have been destroyed, schools have been destroyed, hospitals have been destroyed. And now, with the invasion of Lebanon by Israel, 1 million people have already been displaced from their homes. And so you have to ask the question, if the United States can afford £8.7 billion to support Israel's armaments policy, why on earth can't the same energy, the same resources be put into promoting peace, environmental sustainability, decent food supplies, and human rights around the world? I hope that when we reconvene here in January in the Council of Europe, we'll be able to start discussing a bit more about how we can bring about peace and justice around the world rather than fueling the arms trade and the wars that are taking so many tens of thousands of lives, which we're able to watch live on our television screens.
Thank you, Jeremy. Rainer Roland Büchel is next.
Ja, geschätzter Herr Vorsitzender, geschätzte Anwesende, ich spreche.
Thank you very much indeed, President. I'm going to be speaking about human rights and democracy in our countries and in our council. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we did during Corona. Now, I have already said here that my country took some very stringent measures, and it's important that we consider them critically. I grant you that the challenges were huge, particularly right at the outset. People were so uncertain and so afraid, and various decisions were taken in the name of protecting public health. And we had, of course, lockdowns in order to try and curb the spread of the virus. But those lockdowns had far-reaching implications for people and societies. A lot of people lost their livelihoods, And there was a problem with freedom of assembly, freedom of opinion, and a right to education. And in virtually all member states, those rights were trampled underfoot. So all kinds of mental health issues arose, all kinds of measures of which children bore the brunt in their education in schools. It had to do with our self-determination, and we can't allow a virus to jeopardize our basic rights in that way. And I think that we missed an opportunity here in the Council to do more and to perhaps question or shine a light on some of the measures that were taken. Both here and in many national parliaments, I also think that we missed an opportunity to show our government, show the executive that we are the representatives of the people. It is us, after all, who are elected by the voters, and we excluded people. We sidelined them, and they bore the brunt of all of this, and we have been all too quick to forget that. And it's important now that we try and win back the trust of ordinary people. But basically, everything was propaganda, government propaganda, and we have subsequently done reports, but late in the day. But it's important now that we learn lessons and we strike the right balance between public health and basic rights. We ought to have been more open. And I really do think that in this Council, and I'm sorry to say this, we missed an opportunity to stand up for our rights, human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. And we shouldn't see a repeat of this in future. We must not do this next time round. We really need to do better and need to be more consistent in our actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland. It is Zeynep. Yildiz Zeynep, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, I will be talking about the preservation of coexistence in Europe. And the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe serves as a platform for enhancing democracy, for protecting human rights, and also for understanding how others perceive the world and how our countries are perceived by others. As we depart from here, I think it's essential that each of us lives with a sense of duty. We should have some homework to do. In addition to our legislative function, we have the capacity to conduct awareness-raising activities that can generate significant societal impact. In this context, I believe it's crucial for us to consider the measures that should be taken to preserve the culture of coexistence in Europe and worldwide. Years of imperialism have corroded nations' abilities to govern themselves. Approaches rooted in social Darwinism have led some nations into a misguided sense of dominance, inflicting irreparable wounds on the confidence and the dignity of others. Indeed, these extremisms have primarily contributed to an outbreak of the First World War, and the heavy toll of that conflict subsequently paved the way for the Second World War. As Hobsbawm states, extremisms threaten not only the lives of individuals, but also bonds of society. The rise of radical ideologies foster animosity among people and fragments social cohesion. The history of world is filled with examples of demonstrating the consequences of fostering animosity between individuals. I would like to draw your attention to a particular issue in this context. Without falling into the age-old conundrum of whether the chicken or egg came first, I wish to share a brief chronology. The law enacted in France in 2021, titled Loi pour la protection de la République, was initially named Loi sur le séparatisme islamiste. It should have been a matter of dark humor that a law aimed at combating discrimination bore a title that was fundamentally discriminatory. Yet, this is not the case. Currently in France, the headscarf is being excluded from all areas of public life, jeopardizing the protection of fundamental freedoms such as the freedom of expression and assembly. Excluding headscarf from all the public spaces, the headscarf ban particularly is an intervention far beyond the freedom of expression and constitutes state intervention in individuals' bodily choices. Moreover, those who enacted this law have not only failed to secure the votes of the groups they sought to satisfy, but have also inadvertently provided legitimizing ground for the growing xenophobia and hatred of Islam in Europe. Particularly, this is against hatred of Islam, thus contributing to this to the increase in their electoral support. We should see this reality. Each member state owes its current prosperity to the people from all around the world. This presence enriches and diversifies our societies. We must not forget that we owe our current existence to this diversity. Protéger cette culture de coexistence.
To protect this culture and coexistence, this is our common duty to avoid creating new conflicts by returning. Going back to our when we get back to our countries, we should consider that this is our common duty. I'd like to express my respect for all colleagues who've shared their views within this assembly. Thank you very much indeed.
Dear colleagues, the next item on today's agenda is the continuation of the debate on the progress report of the Bureau and the Standing Committee, document 16045, addendum 3. At its meeting this morning, the Bureau has proposed several references to committees. They are set out in document 16045, addendum 3. These references must be submitted for ratification by the Assembly in accordance with Rule 26.3. Are there any objections to these references? No, thank you. I now propose that the other decisions in the progress report, document 16045, addendum 3, be ratified. Any objections? Thank you. Proposed changes in the composition of committees have been published in Commissions 2024-07, addendum 3. Is there any objection to these changes? No, they are adopted. We have now come to the end of our business. I would like to thank all members of the Assembly, particularly rapporteurs of committees, for their hard work during this part session. I would like to thank the Vice Presidents who chaired during this part session, Mr. Pierre-Alain Prides, Mr. Davis Morris, Mrs. Bernadetta Coma, Mrs. Agnieszka Pomaska, Mr. Markus Wissel, Mr. Andreas Grifroy, Mr. Gerardo Giovanogli. I would also like to thank the staff and interpreters for both permanent and temporary who have worked hard to make this part session a success. I would like to thank especially Mr. Randolph de Battista, who is, as you have heard him earlier, participating for the last time in this session. I wish you all the best. Good luck. Thank you for your contribution to this Assembly and its important role in our world. Dear colleagues, the first part of the 2025 session will be held from 27 to 31st January 2025. I now declare the fourth part of the 20 and 24 session of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe closed. The sitting is closed.